Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my
Well, hello everyone. Let me see. I see we've got a few people on. I've got the chat up. Hopefully you can hear me. I usually wait to hear from someone because I'm paranoid that says you can hear me. While I do my little introduction here. This episode is going to be somewhat inside baseball, so anyone who's watching this who isn't terribly familiar with the Libertarian Party, you'll probably be interested, but you might be lost in some places. If you don't know, I am the current, if you're watching this right now, it's December 2020, National Secretary of the Libertarian Party. Getting my little notebook ready here. I am not as organized this episode as I should be because, as usual, I am running behind. I did record a video on the latest clips from the People's Party as a get ready with me when I was doing my makeup. That took me all the way up till here. I do have some things queued up. Some of the things will be done on the fly. A lot of what we will talk about and say is a we thing. If I get comments from you guys, I will interact with them. This will be very short, if not. Unfortunately, I did not get my audio signal with bringing on guests troubleshooted. So if there is an LNC member on the opposing side, if you'd like to interact with me in chat, unfortunately, I cannot bring you on. If there's anyone who's terribly upset about that, we can plan a show. If you would like to come on, I should have time to troubleshoot more this weekend. I've just been too busy. So what is this whole thing about? Anyone who follows me on Facebook, they will say, if I said that I've been talking a lot about a certain issue, they will say that is the understatement of the century. What this is about is my complete and utter dissatisfaction with the way that the National Libertarian Party, particularly as guided by the LNC, has handled the civil liberty violations that have come about as a result of the pandemic. There's some caveats I should give here that I don't think I should have to. I think people understand rhetoric. But when I say the National Party has been silent, I don't mean that they haven't said anything ever. Anyone who would interpret me that way, I feel bad for you navigating through life. I sponsored a resolution on the very subject last term. Obviously, I know there has been scattered messaging. And hello, Julian. So when I say silent, I mean functionally. We haven't been where we should be. Compared to where we should be, we have been utterly silent. I do not mean we've never said any damn thing. That would be ridiculous to interpret me that way, but unfortunately, some people on the LNC have said some things to discredit my position by saying, well, we have said some things. Yeah, okay. If that's, let me get it on the record. When I say silent, I do not mean never has said anything. But we are absent without leave. We are functionally absent. We are functionally silent. This is the greatest power grab. And I won't even say in peacetime. Though I still might qualify that with peacetime. Let's just qualify it with that because I don't want to have an argument over it. By far the greatest power grab in peacetime that our nation has ever seen. By a factor of 1,000. And we should be screaming from the rooftops. This should be nearly an everyday subject. It's an everyday subject that the citizens of this country are living with. It's the everyday subject that people who now have food insecurity and they're in bread lines in America are dealing with. Boy, we must be fucking privileged where we don't have to talk about this. Crazy. We should be ashamed of ourselves. And I'll get more into this. Julian had stated the LNC sounds like gossip around my high school sometimes. There's some more qualifications I need to make here. This is my only dissatisfaction with the LNC and my colleagues. I do not want my criticisms on this to be taken as criticisms as a whole. In fact, the whole reason why I often am very vague and just say, quote unquote, the LNC or someone, because I don't want to name people, because this isn't about any particular person. And I don't want anyone to think that this is about our chair. With the exception of this issue, which I blame the entire LNC for, not the chair, this is the best LNC I've seen in a long time, including looking back in history. I believe our chair is doing an excellent job. He's one of the best managers I have ever seen. I have utmost respect for my colleagues in every issue but this one. And it's a doozy. And just because I'm in agreement everywhere else, I'm not going to be silent on this. I've become somewhat of the black sheep because I've been so public. And in fact, where some people got really, really butthurt is when I invited the press to contact me. They say, oh, you're trying to purposely harm the party. No, I'm not. I'm trying to get us to do the right thing. I don't want to say I'm trying to save the party because I don't think we're in danger of being destroyed ideologically, or maybe our soul is. But just for the record, I had 2 press requests from entities that I did not believe would be in the best interest of the Libertarian Party for me to talk to, and I declined. My invitation specifically was not to the press in general. It was to Reason Magazine. That's really the only one I would talk to. because they are fellow libertarians who care about the Libertarian Party. But oh my God, you know, in some ways, I'm a bit of a whistleblower on this issue, and we do not treat whistleblowers the way we think the government should. It is ridiculous. Let me tell you, we have a big problem also in this party, and this has nothing to do with this LNC. It's been going on a long time with not having a whistleblower policy and treating people who dare to speak out as if you should keep that talk behind the scenes. That's what the old corrupt parties do. I will not. And anyone who expects me to, too bad. You might remember, if you were watching the second sitting of the convention, or you were there, what I said in my nomination speech. I said I called out the backroom deals and the dirty dealing that was going on in the Libertarian Party. Now, this, what I'm talking about now, isn't any kind of corruption. There was actual corruption last time. This isn't corruption. It's just mishandling. So I made that promise, and I was elected. If I were not to do what I'm doing now, I would be going back on a campaign promise, and I've never gone back on a campaign promise. Not when I was Region 1, not when I was Secretary prior term, and I'm not about to start that now. Everyone knew what they were getting with me. I'm the same, and I'm not different offline than I am online. I don't put on multiple faces. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. And I think most party members appreciate it, and I do believe David Nolan would appreciate it, because he did the same thing. He called out the party when they were straying from principle. Remember that Monday, was it the Monday morning message or whatever, that he just excoriated because it said winning is the only principle, and he was pretty much like, fuck you, winning isn't even a principle. It might be an ends, but it's not a principle. So that is why I do what I do. It is out of love for the party, and it's not out of disrespect for my colleagues. If I thought they were absolutely useless, I wouldn't say anything. Probably because there'd be no damn good. Let me tell you, throughout this, I will start to outline for you what I think the party should do. But one thing I think the party should do, which we'll get into, is admit it fumbled on this and that it would do better. But people do not want to admit they are wrong. In fact, that is actually what one LNC member said to me. We can't do Action X because it would make it seem like we haven't been doing very much these past, 10 months. And I said, exactly, that's the point. Swallow your pride, admit we fucked up. You want to know what would happen if we did that? Mad respect. That's how the adults in the room act. The adults in the room admit when they were wrong. So, Steve Dosbach, someone I respect greatly, a former chair, one of the top 2 chairs I think that have ever been in our party, he challenged me to say, well, what have you done to try to fix this? Well, earlier in the year, I did have the LNC pass a resolution, but we all know resolutions are functionally useless unless they get spread all over the place. I don't believe this was ever sent out as a press release. It was called a press release on our website, and it fell off after a couple of weeks. I don't think we did anything else with it. I'm not sure if we tweeted it. It may have gone on Facebook. I don't count social media as hard-hitting responses. Social media, people read it and they forget it the next second. And they can't find it if they wanted to find it again a week later. Don't tell me we tweeted on something. Really? Just the word tweet should tell you how unserious that fucking is. And that is so ephemeral that they even now let you fleet. But let's back up here a little. So with former chair Dosbach, so I said, fine, this next LNC meeting, I'll put something on the agenda to see if we're ready to finally do something. And I have the recording of that portion of the LNC meeting. I hesitated. I've vacillated all day. Do I show the recording or do I not show the recording? Should I just summarize the arguments made and respond to them more in full here, or do I play it? Cons of playing it. It attaches arguments to certain people, and I don't want to single out people. I don't want to target any of my colleagues. But if I summarize it, I'm not letting people speak for themselves, and I might not summarize it properly, or people might not believe me what the arguments were. Or I might make it sound worse than it was, because that's just human, right? I'm not going to say that the arguments made were absolutely ridiculous in isolation, because they weren't. They are absolutely ridiculous when you look at the big picture of how we've done almost nothing. But during the course of the meeting, just within that little isolated bubble of the meeting, no, they weren't the worst arguments you'd ever heard. But in the larger scope, I do think they're inexcusable. So I finally came down on the side of I need to play it and just tell people everyone has bad votes and bad decisions. And don't judge any person by one decision, even though this is a pretty frickin' big one. Not this vote, but this whole issue. So let's play it, and then let's discuss it, if that's okay with you guys. Is there sound? Doesn't seem like we have sound. 1 second here. Let me go back, because I don't see the sound here. Let me stop this. Okay, why don't we have sound? I know, that's my press release, dude. It's not sufficient, and it didn't go out to anywhere. It just was on the website, and that will be on my list. Why isn't there sound? We might need to stream it from YouTube. Let me check this one more time. One moment. Apologize for that. I should have tested that, and I didn't, but I really was running. I have sound on the file on my computer, so what I think I'm going to do is open it in QuickTime and then just share my screen. Let me make sure there is sound on my computer.
Signatures would be increased.
There is. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to, you didn't see anyone's lips moving. That's true. Let me try it again here on the screen and see if I forward it a little, if we get sound. Let me do it right to there.
So,
oh, here we go. So, okay. Maybe I clipped it a little too shortly. So let's see how this goes, okay? Let's just run it and see when the sound comes in. I thought I started it. It seems like I started this in the wrong spot. We might still have to go to YouTube, because I might have inadvertently clipped out the wrong part, because this looks like the beginning of the meeting, doesn't it? Let's go forward a little bit here. If so, okay, yep, we're streaming on YouTube. Yep, this is the beginning. I screwed up. Let me see here.
Mr. Went, because he hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll do second rounds on everybody.
Let me
Mr.
find it.
Gonna have all
I
of
see
you
what
on.
happened. This isn't the extract. This is the full meeting, so I'll need to find it. I believe it was about an hour in. So let's go to about an hour, and I'll be able to find it.
So I will somewhat echo a lot of what Mr. Wentz said, that I'm not a fan of single-use.
Okay, yep, this is it. So let's go back maybe 10 minutes.
And then, yes, there is the media and messaging.
Okay, nope, it's before that.
It would be, because the staff has a lot of other.
Okay, yep, that's me. I'm giving the motion right there. So let's just go back a little bit more.
About those two things.
Okay, before that.
And I know people have a lot of different opinions.
Okay, yep, that's right at the beginning of my motion. So we're getting there, we're getting there. Yeah, I didn't copy the clip. I copied the whole meeting. Let's see.
Us better than we can currently do with our staff. And I think that we need to be conscious of that and direct our staff to make sure that Civi gets to work.
Okay, this is the end of the discussion of Civi CRM.
Adams has talked about.
Let's let this play, and
people
it'll start in a
Georgia and
moment.
Tennessee are very interested in seeing happen. A certain amount of money in the.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda.
Here we go.
Is Committee to Address COVID-19 Response by Ms. Harlos, 15 minutes.
Right, one moment. I want to pull this up here again. There's been a lot of discussion amongst membership, and I know people have a lot of different opinions on this. That we've been, well, I'm making an argument. I don't want to make an argument yet. So that was just an introduction. I'll say my motion, and if there's a second, I will give my argument. Establish a committee to work with staff and the party chair regarding the party's messaging in response to the violations of civil liberties by the state due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The committee shall comprise Karen Ann Harlos, Aaron Adams, Jeffrey Hewitt, plus one additional LNC member to be chosen by the party chair, and 4 non-LNC members to be chosen by the 4 LNC members of the committee.
Ms. Harlos has moved the language she just read to establish a committee to that effect. Is there
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Longstreth. Is there objection?
I object.
There is objection, so we'll proceed to debate. Ms. Harlos, I'll recognize you first, and anybody else wish to speak, just raise your hand. I'll put you on the queue. Ms. Harlos?
Okay, and I'm sure I'm going to end up putting my hand up to address objections because I don't really know what they all will be, but I'm trying to anticipate them. I firmly believe, though I'm sure some people would say it's arguable, that what is going on right now is the biggest peacetime power grab and violations of our civil liberties. And the reason I say peacetime is I can imagine being a Japanese person interred and be like, yeah, really, you're upset. So I will just say peacetime. And we've been largely silent. And I think that's shameful. I didn't believe, like, I thought maybe I'm just getting old because I am. And I went and did a search on lp.org to see, surely we've said some things on this. The only article I could find was back in March. And it was a great interview. It was with Dr. Varner. But with my knowledge of the party's history, when violations of civil liberties had happened in the past, and I know we do not have a communications director at this time, but we would throw royal fits. Like I can show you press releases that we put out, very, very upset when teenagers weren't allowed to tan, when the low flow toilets were mandated. We got more upset about those two things than we've said about the entire economy crashing around people's heads, mass suicides from people whose futures have been completely stolen from them. I don't need to list all the violations, but the Party of Liberty being silent on this. But I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting we take any position on things that we are somewhat ignorant of, where none of us are scientists. What we need to talk about is the government power grab, not arguing over yes mask, no mask. What our arguments, in my opinion, should be is that people need to become informed and make their responsible personal decisions, but that this is not the role of the government. I don't want to get into looking like we're science denialists or whatever the insult of the day is, but just to be promoting our basic message of personal responsibility and the proper role of the state. I keep saying it's shameful of our response. That is too mild of a word. I don't think the English language has a word for the way we have abdicated our duty here. We've spent more time arguing about trivialities than about the complete destruction of what's going on right now. We're losing our country, literally. The most recent example of this I can give would be after 9/11, and we were very, very active in that. But we are AWOL on the job. And if the Libertarian Party isn't at the forefront of objecting to this, we should disband. Honestly, we have just become existing to have meetings and existing to perpetuate ourselves, not freedom. And I will address objections. I'll just get in line for objections. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harlos. Let me just read, there's a lot of hands up, so let me just read the order so everybody knows what the order is. I have Ms. Bilyeu, Mr. Roudset, Mr. Wendt, Ms. Ebke, Ms. Hogarth, Mr. Valente, Mr. Nikela, Mr. Coburn. So Ms. Bilyeu.
Yeah, I think my question would just be specifically what would they do? And would they have authority to actually release, to publish press releases? Or what do you see the actions being taken by this committee? Are they just going to advise us on what we should be saying and then we still have to delegate it to someone else? Or how do you see this actually playing out?
May I answer, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Harlos.
It's an advisory committee. So it would be, because the staff has a lot of other things to do. And if you had a committee dedicated to wordsmithing and giving specific examples, it would still have to be approved by the party chair. It's an advisory committee that would take on the dedicated work to give the nuanced responses, because staff just simply doesn't have time to do that right now. And I would say probably the chair doesn't either. So it's advisory only. They are not empowered to do anything unilaterally.
Ms. Bilyeu, did that answer your question?
Yes, and just there's a comment from Ms. Hogarth in the chat saying that we already have a committee to do this, and I'm not clear on which one she thinks that is. I'm trying to sort that out, but does a committee that could do this already exist is a question I have, I guess, for the chair.
Was that rhetorical, or do you want an answer from me?
No, I would like an answer. I'm trying to decipher this right now because I'm not on our list one that might do that, but.
So my answer would be two. I think we do have, we obviously have a chairs committee on media and messaging. I think it would fall within their area of, they would be able to do it if they wanted to. But secondarily, and I said this in my chair's report, everybody on this call, every libertarian can give me advice, and you do whenever you want, without the existence of a committee. And, on an almost daily basis, somebody sends me, hey, this article is neat. Hey, this thing is neat. Hey, this thing is neat. And we share it. And then you just clarified this in the chat, APRC, they're a veto point on stuff. They don't produce content. So that's why I wouldn't think they would be the natural fit for this. Does that answer your question, Ms. Bilyeu? Okay. I have Mr. Roudset and then Mr. Wendt. Mr. Roudset.
Thank you. I'm not against the idea of messaging in this regards. And actually, I think Ms. Harlos has a very valid point that we have been oddly quiet on this. However, I'm against the creation of an official committee to do this, especially if the LNC votes to create this committee. And I see this as a temporary issue, or at least I hope COVID-19 is a temporary issue. And if a committee like this is needed, well, then it is still the chair's prerogative to create a advisory committee for himself in this regards without any need for the LNC to vote. So I don't see the rationale or the need to create via vote this committee. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brownstone. I
go back to this scene here because I don't want this to get away from me before I address some of these. And Ruben, I'm not sure what you mean by invite you. Okay, so the reason I'm going to be addressing them here, let me give you a bit of parliamentary bitching. 15 minutes were allotted for this. It's an important issue. Everyone wanted to talk. You may have noted that I kept my opening speech brief. I did that to be courteous to everyone, and I wanted to hear what the actual objections were rather than guess. But per Roberts, I could have talked for 10 minutes, and you guys know damn well I could talk for 10 minutes. But I didn't. I chose not to. And that's the way I believe you should try to be when you're doing these sorts of things. So everyone had their chance to talk. Then when it came time for me to respond, time was up and they refused to extend time to even let me respond. I believe I moved, we'll find out that what the amount of time was that I moved to extend for, but they denied it. Wouldn't even give me a chance to respond. And sorry, I think that's fucking rude as hell, and I don't do that to anybody, even on minor issues. I should have just spoke for 10 minutes. That's how my courtesy was repaid. This is a beef I have not just with the LNC, I have it with most boards. Here's my opinion. If you respect your colleagues, Ruben, I will encourage you to listen earlier to my comments generally on the fact that I think we have an excellent LNC. It's just this issue. I am not calling here for anyone to be voted out or anything like that. I don't find that productive. So I'm just wanted to make that clear that this is not a bash my colleagues thing. It's to criticize them on this issue and this issue alone. So my view parliamentarily is if you respect your colleagues and there are people who still want to speak and it hasn't gotten repetitive, and the chair can cut off repetitive arguments. He has that in his power to say, I know, Aaron, we'll get to that. I didn't mean all of you. Let me qualify this here. I tried to just say the LNC to include myself and not single people out. I explained that earlier. Aaron has been a fucking warrior. So any of my complaints that I've said, you can exclude Aaron. You can exclude a lot of people, but you definitely can exclude Aaron. You may have noticed in the wording on my motion, I named 3 people specifically to that committee because those are the 3 people who have never blinked on this issue. Myself, Aaron, and Jeff Hewitt. Never blinked. But in general, I believe that if your colleagues still want to speak and the chair has not ruled arguments dilatory, you fucking extend time to let them speak. It's rude. It's freaking rude. And that isn't about this motion. I said this actually earlier in the meeting, I think. Something else that's rude is calling the question when people still want to talk. I don't believe in silencing people. That's just me. This has always been my pet peeve. The people in Colorado will tell you that I once lost my cool when someone, here's the worst, we don't do this on the LNC, but you want to know what people do a lot. They go up to the mic, they argue, and call the question when they're done arguing. Oh, so you're saying, oh, my voice is important. I'm going to say what I have to say, and then I'm going to call the question. What a way to, pull the ladder up after you. And I lost my cool one Colorado convention, and I stood up and said, you're allowed to do it, but you're a fucking asshole. Don't be an asshole at meetings. If people still want to talk and it's not gotten repetitive, because if it's gotten repetitive, object and ask the chair to call it dilatory. Let people have their say. Otherwise, it will be resentments. Obviously, I resent that I wasn't allowed to respond. But anyway, I don't want to let this get away. I want to respond as it's going here. And somebody had noticed this in chat of a mistake in term that I used. You have to understand, it's very nerve-wracking to make these motions, and I will sketch out bullet points, but I don't write my speeches in full. And I intended to say a mass amount of suicides, because yes, there has been an increase in suicides. But instead, I stumbled and said mass suicides, and an LNC member in chat decided that is what they were going to focus on in the Zoom chat. About, that's just Jonestown stuff. That's not... Obviously, I know that. What are you nitpicking that? I obviously misspoke. You don't think I know what mass suicides are? I ran a theological forum, studied cults. I know what I meant mass amounts of suicide. When people stumble over words, I think a little bit of graciousness is in order. So I concede that that was the wrong term. The idea that the Media and Marketing Committee could handle this, these are unofficial committees. They weren't created. And thank you for Utah. You were perfectly civil in your criticism of me, by the way. What was said in the Zoom chat, which I wish I saved, was a little bit more obnoxious, and it really pissed me off. It's like, you're just going to concentrate on that. You by no means did that for Utahns. The Media Marketing Committee, these chair advisory committees are like proof of concept committees. They have no real power at all. It's a future framework that Chair Bishop Henchman sees for how the LNC could run in the future, and I agree with him. So the Media and Marketing Committee was not a committee to dump this on. Plus, I don't even think they had even met yet. I could be wrong. No, wait, Media and Marketing did meet. That's Eric Rotsup's committee. But they're busy working on social media protocols. Excuse me. Pardon me. I totally misspoke there because Eric has been on the ball with his committee. Some of the chair advisory committees hadn't even met yet. But he had his hands full with developing protocol for social media volunteers. And that's a huge thing. So, no. And if they had wanted to take this on, they could have mentioned it. I'm the one who mentioned it to bring it to a motion. Obviously, Aaron, Jeff, we've been talking. But they didn't bring the motion. I did. And we'll get to why the objections to the 3 names I put forward too. But they haven't said it yet. So Mr. Radsup's comment that this is hopefully a temporary issue. We don't live on hope. It doesn't matter if it's temporary. The repercussions from this are going to be permanent in our country. It does. So, plus, you'll see that people will get into this issue, and I want to say this ahead of time so you think of this. They're opposed to single-use committees. I wonder if these people have read frickin' Roberts. That's the whole purpose of a committee. You do have some standing committees that are kind of standard, but the problem with that idea is a committee is supposed to be something that requires more detail than can be done within the context of a board meeting. So you refer the question to a committee who can handle it, they bring back their recommendations, and the committee dissolves. Committees are supposed to be single use. The vast majority of committees are supposed to be ad hoc, single-use committees. That's what committees are. Read Roberts, people. Just because we do have a significant number of standing committees on the LNC, the last thing we need is another frickin' standing committee. We need a whole lot more single-use committees. And we do them all the time. Back during Satangate, if you remember, when the national Facebook page did a Church of Satan meme on Good Friday, we created a single-use committee to examine what went wrong. And that was perfectly fine. We couldn't do that in the context of an LNC meeting. So this objection to a single-use committee is so wrong-headed. And I don't understand how people familiar with parliamentary procedure could have that kind of objection. That is what committees should be used for. We create way too many standing and permanent committees. The last thing we needed, and you'll see they start to suggest, why don't we broaden the scope of this committee and make it permanent? We don't need to multiply bureaucracy, okay? We got enough bureaucracy in the LP. So that's what's been said so far. I wanted to address it while it was fresh in everyone's mind. Did I write down what time stamp we were at? Because I have a feeling when I go back to it, it's going to reset to the beginning. I don't think I wrote it down. Oh, and notice how I started my speech. I said we've been largely silent. So this whole thing of we haven't been silent, we've said a few. Really? Okay. So let me go back and hopefully it will start where it left off. If it didn't, I'm going to have to find my spot. I'm sorry.
Actually inaccurate.
By Mr. Ferreira. I have Mr. Coburn, and then without a...
However, I do offer an amendment in case this does pass.
To amend. Correction, Ms. DeSisto.
Razor's Edge does, to clarify my...
To where it's at. Certainly, what is it going to cost? Does not work as it.
We work on what we already have in front of us.
The language she just read to establish a committee to that effect.
Maybe I'm just getting old because I am, and I want to be clear. Example of this I by the party chair. It's an advisory.
Hey, this thing is neat. Hey, this thing is neat, and we share it.
Literally.
Neat. Hey, this thing is neat, and we share it.
Without any need for the LNC to vote. So I don't see the rationale or
Okay, I'm sorry. I was talking and my mic was muted during a movie, they call this. So apologies, let me start over. I didn't address this one point that Eric said where the chair could just handle this. The fact is the chair hasn't handled it. But besides that, we have something in this party that I call chair worship, where we think the chair should just do whatever. I'm sorry, that's not the way we're set up. We already have too much of a model of a strong chair, and a few of us have some motions we're getting ready to make to weaken that. But it's ultimately the LNC's responsibility. You don't just say, well, the chair can do it. We're allowed to override the chair. And if we don't see something being done, it's our responsibility to make that motion. So that just is not valid. I'm sorry. And the fact is, this term started in July. It hasn't happened. So now let me put myself back on mute and continue the movie.
the need to create via vote this committee. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roudsep. I have Mr. Wendt and then Ms. Ebke. Mr. Wendt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a few issues with this motion and the creation of this committee. First, I'm not a real big fan of single-use committees. I realize that's what ad hoc committees come from, but if you look at the traffic that I've been putting forward, it's about trying to reduce our single-use committees and kind of stop some of the crossover. And what I see with this committee on messaging, it's a single-use committee, and it's going to cross over into items in the budget that we just passed. I mean, we're looking for a communications director, not officially. That's all up on employment, but that's one of our goals. So, are we going to just kind of undercut that right from the start? And then, yes, there is the media and messaging chairs advisory committee. So. And then my third real issue with this is that the specifically naming of LNC members, it takes the kind of the vote out of it. If I were to amend this to say to strike the names listed and list Laura Ebke, Valerie Sarwark, and Jared Hall as the names, would it change the composition of the committee? And I do believe it would. So I think that this committee is not necessarily fully formed, and I think it can be accomplished through other means.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. I have Ms. Ebke and then Ms. Hogarth. Ms. Ebke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would echo what Mr. Wendt just said, except that I don't want to be on the committee. So please don't nominate me. But I do think that it's concerning that we are talking about creating a committee that is of a particular use, single short-term use, and you know, that's a concern. The other concern that I would have is that so far we really don't have any significant nationwide actions for the national party to complain about. I like to see us stay in our lane. Every state has different regulations, and you know, there are real live lockdowns in some places. There are you know, mask mandates in some places, and in some places those things are just highly suggested. So I prefer to see the federal, you know, the national party kind of stay in our own lane and not try to issue broad statements about what's going on when in many states that's not going on. So I would object as well to the naming of a particular committee members. Those committee members are all perfectly able to contact the chair to provide advice, I think. So thank you.
Okay, so we are at 2232. Let me write that down so we could go back. I want to address the things. I already addressed the single use committee thing. And you'll notice that Mr. Wendt mentioned where he's working on reducing our other single use committees. Ms. Adams completely corrected him on that. They aren't single use committees, our standing committees, they're single purpose. The use goes on for years, such as the historical committee. It's a single purpose committee, not a single use committee. There's a big confusion on that. But again, the fact is, that is what committees are for. Here's the problem. On the LNC, I find I'm often damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I say the LNC should do something, I get called micromanaging. Now, when I want to form a committee to do it and keep the LNC out of it, now I'm doing something else wrong. There's so much damned if you do, damned if you don't on the LNC. So Mr. Wendt says this could be done by other means, but it's not. That is the problem. Sure, I could have made 10 different motions that would have accomplished this. I picked the one that I thought would be the least controversial. So, yeah, it could be done by other means. Why didn't you propose them? And if you didn't like my motion, why didn't you amend it? Anyone could have amended it. Now, as to why those particular people, again, I think there's some ignorance of Roberts here. It is not unusual to have the person who championed a committee be on the committee. In fact, it's quite common and courteous a lot of times to have the person who championed the committee chair the committee. But I didn't say anything about a chair. So my name being on there was perfectly rational. And Aaron and Jeff, because they've never blinked. Because Roberts also says the people who are on committee should be people who believe in the purpose of the committee. I don't believe, and the vote bore me out, that the majority of other LNC members believed in the purpose of the committee. And I wanted to make sure the committee wasn't sabotaged by having the wrong people on it. There's committees I shouldn't be on because I don't believe in the purpose of the committee. There's nothing at all weird about saying people that should be on it. And in fact, I was trying to be courteous to the chair by leaving an open spot for the chair to put in someone of his own choosing. I didn't have to put that in that motion, but I did to defer to the chair, to show respect to the chair. We can always say it can be done by some other means. I want to do something. I don't want to quibble about the means. And also, I am astonished at Ms. Epke saying this is outside of our lane. What? Our members don't think so. And we certainly, listen, when Charlottesville went down, that happened in a specific state, we put out a press release telling people to leave the party. No one said stay in your lane then. I could come up with a million things that we talk about that I could say, stay in your lane. Something that is going to functionally destroy our country. And the fact that Mr. Biden has threatened, Mr. is probably not the right, President-elect Biden has threatened federal mask mandates. This isn't outside of our lane. This is constitutional rights. The Constitution is a national document. How is this outside of our lane? I really, when I heard that, you might have noticed during, if you saw what I was doing, I was really trying to keep my emotions in check. Chase, so do I. I hope if you didn't see the beginning of the stream, please go and listen to the beginning of it where I give my opinion on the LNC and my colleagues, because I don't want this to be a bash of the LNC. It's a bash of this decision and this problem, but this is the best LNC I've seen in a very long time. So anyone who didn't hear the beginning, please go back and hear the beginning. So this is our lane. And state parties that are speaking out want us also to speak out. The state chair of Colorado, for instance, she is excellent on this issue. She and I have a lot of arguments, but not on this. She's excellent on this, and she's absolutely mortified at the state part, at the national party. Has Ms. Epke asked any of the affiliates if they want us to say something? I guarantee you the majority of them do. We could get national press. Colorado is not going to get national press. Colorado is not going to be mentioned in the Washington Post the way we do. You know, I got the Historical Preservation Committee mentioned in the Washington Post, but if it was the Colorado Preservation Committee, it wouldn't have been. If we raised enough stink, we would get invited on shows. If it bleeds, it leads, and the silly libertarians, let's get them on. But as long as we didn't act, if we astounded them and we actually had rational things to say. There's no reason why we haven't been on Kennedy or any of these. Now, I know we need a communications director. That was the other thing that came up. It says, are we undercutting the communications director? Okay, one of the chair's advisory committees is fundraising and budget, or I can't remember the name. Is that committee, by its existence, undercutting Ms. DeSisto, who is our fundraiser? No. We have plenty of committees that work on things that we have staff members for. The LNC and its committees direct the staff. We forget that sometimes. Plus, we don't yet have a communications director. We're at least 2 months out, and we need things done now. Plus, the communications director coming in, do we want to just throw this on them cold? Or would it be nice to have a framework that we're pretty happy with and hand it to them as a gift? Here's the plan. Can you continue implementing this? For Utahns, it might, but that's the worst that can happen. And you want to know why I don't think they would? Because the presidential campaign is different, because there's competitors. And they want one of those two competitors to win. We don't get ignored nearly as much when we're doing issues and there isn't an election. And why I don't think they'd be ignored? Because on a small scale, in Colorado, where our candidates get ignored, I got a shit ton of press. I'll have more to say on that after some more objections came, because again, I want to go back. I want to finish the LNC part, and then we'll continue talking. And I will scroll back through comments because I know there were some things said that I want to interact with. So, what did I say? We were at 232. So let's go back and let me try to find it.
Those discussions,
with the
Surely we
already have it.
There's the media and
Formed from the people.
but
to the naming of a particular committee members. Those committee members are all perfectly.
This is close
able
enough,
to,
I think.
Contact the chair to provide advice, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ebke. I have Ms. Hogarth and then Mr. Valente. Ms. Hogarth?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have your the mandates to the chair advisory committees. So I was looking for it, but I can't find it. I'm just wondering what the marketing and media subcommittee, if this does fall within its purview. I think it is an important issue and we should address it. I have the same concerns that others have expressed about creating a committee formed from the people who want it to be created. If it is created, I'd like to be on it. I think we have to, be very careful about wording. But do you have right in front of you, sorry, the mandate for the marketing and media committee?
I don't have it in front of me. It's generally providing oversight of our messaging and outreach and public relations activities. And presumably when we have a communications director, working with that person to, review their plans and proposals and everything. So that would be the gist of it.
Okay, so yeah, I guess my concern is that we have a tail wagging the dog situation here. Sorry for the cliche. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hogarth. I have Mr. Valente and then Mr. Nikela. Mr. Valente.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So I will somewhat echo a lot of what Mr. Wentz said, that I'm not a fan of single-use committees. I think that, we can start them up, but we always have problems ending them. I think this would have been better if we had come up with this committee 6 months ago, 10 months ago. I think that we're on the back nine, and by the time we get this committee fired up, the many of the concerns we can address some of the things that had happened, but I just don't think that by the time we get this committee up and functioning, and plus the fact that it's just an advisory committee, will serve any purpose other than to create another layer of the onion. So that's all I got.
Okay, 1950 is where I need to go back to. If you notice, I've been like letting two people speak and then addressing. If I hear single-use committee one more time, I am going to commit ritual suicide in the middle of an LNC meeting. I'm just going to frickin' stab myself in his stomach and commit Harry-Carry. Yeah, okay. I am... there's something I started to say last time. If you have been looking at me at all during this, you've noticed that like I've been looking down the entire time and just like jotting down notes because I was really keeping my emotions in check. My face tends to give away what I think of what somebody is saying, and I think my face would have been quite rude if I looked up. I'm not good at being deadpan. So, in case you were curious, and I was writing down notes because I had thought the committee would let me respond. Silly me. I don't even have words for the argument of an objection to a committee being comprised of people who believe in the committee. That, I don't like using words like dumb, but that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. So what, you want the committee made up of people who don't believe in the committee? Okay. We all say dumb things. I said mass suicide, so that was stupid, so okay. But the fact that there may be some overlap, it's because this is a complicated issue. And all of those things that the chair said the media marketing committee is supposed to do, that's full-time as it is. This is not easy. This is complex and we have to be very, very careful in what we say. It takes a lot of time and dedication. That's why it needed to be broken out. And all I keep hearing now that I'm listening to this, I didn't re-listen to this since the meeting. All these objections, no solutions. Everyone seems to admit we have a problem. Well, not everyone. I'm sorry. Ms. Hogarth did. No solutions. And Mr. Valente said we've had a problem ending ad hoc committees. No, we haven't. Name one. No, we haven't. And the fact is, even if this LNC had a problem ending it, it ends. All ad hoc committees end at the expiration of this term of the LNC. Our policy manual says that. So already it has a limited life by default. But he could have amended the motion and said, with the purpose of this committee being revisited in March at our next meeting. Could have amended it. All these objections, no solutions. And how long it would take for this committee to get going? I'm ready now, hon. Don't take me any time to wind up. I'm wound up already. And again, as Ms. Adams said, and I'm sorry I'm using the last names, when I'm dealing with LNC stuff, I'm used to the formalities. Aaron, who's in chat, said, yeah, sunk argument. Okay, we fucked up so bad, we might as well fuck up all the way. Richard, this is a due committee as well. it's not just the study, it was the study and do. And the chair did have a say. And there were some differing viewpoints. So just in general. And people could have amended it if they wished. I wanted it to happen. But let's and if you all were curious as to the non-LNC members that I would have advocated for to be on it, Angela McArdle, Chris Weist, and I think I had another name I was thinking of. But Angela would have been from the activist viewpoint, and she's immunocompromised, so she has a specific point of view. Chris is an attorney who has a certain point of view. I think I had two other names, but it was trying to come up with people from different affected communities, I guess would be the best way to put it. By the way, Richard, that's a great picture of you and your avatar. Sorry, it was just, I noticed it. So let me continue. I need to go back to 1950. Let's go back.
By Mr.
Committee on
that had happened. Will serve any purpose other
Close
than
enough.
to create another
Here.
layer of the onion. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Valente. I have Mr. Nikela and then Mr. Coburn. Mr. Nikela?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I'd love to see this committee happen. And if you've lived in an area with lockdowns or county ordinances or any of those sorts of things, I just spoke to a gentleman yesterday that went to jail for refusing to wear a mask on Duval Street, to give you an idea of the situation we have here in the Florida Keys. Regardless of whether or not this passes, I'm in favor of the LNC members getting together if we do act in the advisory role, and I'd love to be a part of this because I do believe the party should be stepping up and being at the forefront of this issue as we are the party of liberty. We should be having much more of a voice in the media through our channels when it comes to this. This year alone, I've been on Telemundo, MSNBC, The Tom Woods Show, local media, and more, just because I've been engaged in the issue with the Libertarian Party of Florida. And I think that if we did create a committee in official capacity, we would have a little bit more punch when it comes to perhaps helping to get the media on board or saying, hey, you have a personal story, submit it to this, the committee on the COVID committee in the Libertarian Party, etc., which could be valuable. I'm sure we could find other ways. And granted, this committee would only be a standing committee, so it would only be around till the end of the term regardless, since it's not something that's official within our bylaws. So it would be temporary. We have done temporary committees before on things like social media process review committee, which I helped write the motion for back in, 2016. So we do these things time to time. I think our response hasn't been great. I think until we get a communications director in, we really haven't had a strategy on how we're going to address COVID. And I think that, like I said, regardless of whether or not this passes, I'd be happy to get with the people that are interested in putting something together, because we do need a more directed strategy on COVID. There is a lot of opportunity there, I believe, with a lot of what's going on in the country. We should be in California right now, but we're not. We're here on Zoom because Governor Newsom and the terrible, hypocritical laws that are being put into place over there, as well as other places. So I would like to capture the opportunity. Whether or not this passes, I definitely would like to get together with the others. And even if we're an unofficial, we'll call it ad hoc or just an LNC get-together group, I think that would even be sufficient. But whatever capacity, I do believe we should be at the forefront of COVID. Thank you.
Okay, 1710. I stopped here because Mr. Coburn is next and he is opposed. And I wanted to deal with Steve's points. If Stephen was almost a person I also named as one of the automatic members. He's chair of Florida, and I thought he might have his hands a bit too full. But he has been great on this issue. He's been absolutely fantastic on this issue. He's the first person, as you noticed, to propose an alternative solution and volunteered to be on it. For those of you who don't know, that's what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be an LNC committee. I've asked people, and anyone who's in this group that wants to assist, email me at my personal email, because this is not going to have to do, it's not sanctioned by the party. So don't email me at secretary, because that would be inappropriate. KarenAnnHarlos@gmail.com. And a group of us are going to get together once I finish the minutes, because my primary commitment is to my position and I need to take care of the minutes. And it takes me about 40 hours to do the LNC minutes. So I'm going to try to bust them out. I've started them. I'm going to try to bust them out this weekend. So a group of us, I've got some, I think 10 people wrote me already. And it turns out the Mises Caucus has already been working on this. Though I got to talk to Michael Heiss, because he bought the domains Stop the Lockdowns or something like this. And I want to put a bug in his ear, because I think it's broader than just lockdowns. And Aaron, let me get with you on something that you'll, I think, like, because it just, that ADHD, it just reminded me. But perhaps it will be joining up with a little bit of what the Mises Caucus is doing as an affinity or whatever. There's no sense to split efforts, but I also don't want it to be a caucus thing. So however that works out. This group of people that are going to be getting together, we're going to brainstorm and either do responses ourselves, or, because it's not mutually exclusive, put together a strategy for the LNC. They could adopt it if they want to. I have lots of ideas of what the LNC could do. Before we leave tonight, I'll tell you what some of them are. One of them comes up by somebody else in this meeting, but I had already had that idea. But I'm just one person. You get a bunch of brains together, I bet you we would come up with something fantastic. I'm kind of soured right now on the National Party, so I'm like, fuck them, let's not give them a strategy. But I'm chilling out. So this committee, this group, informal group, whatever we want to call it, I hope we do decide to draw up a strategy plan to send to the LNC. But regardless, be ready to just do things on our own. And here's what's so silly. Libertarians love control. They pretend like they don't, but they do. That's why we fetishize Roberts so much. We love frickin' control. A lot of people on the LNC are worried about saying the wrong thing and having it associated with the party. If LNC members and a bunch of Libertarian Party members go off on their own and do something, even though it's not officially sanctioned by the National Party, it will be associated by default with the party, whether they like it or not. They can either have oversight over that group of people, or they cannot have oversight over that group of people. What do you think is smarter? Sometimes people don't think things through. So you basically invited a bunch of rogue libertarians to go out there and the LNC to have no say over them, and it will be associated with the party, whether they like it or not. What Arvin Vohra said on his personal page was associated with the party, even though it wasn't official statements. When the national secretary is involved and other LNC members are involved, and the only reason I mentioned single myself out because I'm an officer, it's going to be associated with the party no matter what. Even though we would make it clear it's not official, it doesn't matter. Arvin Vohra's page wasn't official either. Wouldn't you rather have control, LNC? I don't think you thought it through. Okay, so go back to 1710 where we're getting into some more opposition. Let me start that back up.
Putting something
that are against
our capacity, I do believe we should be at the forefront of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicola. I have Mr. Coburn and then Mr. Smith. Mr. Coburn?
Thank you. Quite a few comments here, but just to echo off of Mr. Nicola's remarks, I think it would certainly be appropriate for the members that have listed themselves in this proposal to get together as a group and perhaps make a press release or some other resolution that we can consider as the LNC. To be frank, I think there are other major affronts to our civil liberties that have happened recently that we have not responded to by creating a committee, creating an advisory committee. I would point back, I mean, it's still ongoing, but the Black Lives Matter movement was really a hot button issue just a couple months ago, and we didn't make an advisory committee on that. So I think that this is to be blunt and to be frank, it seems like a committee for the sake of creating a committee. It seems like there is a push here to have a committee that sounds official on the topic, and I'm against that. I would rather see us come with a proposal for a press release, come with a proposal for a resolution or a statement by the party, rather than just creating a committee.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. I have Mr. Smith and then Ms. Adams. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't find anything that I disagree with Karen Ann Harlos or Stephen Nicola on, for that matter. I do want to point out, Mr. Robsep stated that we don't know if COVID is temporary or not. That's true. What we do know is that the government overreach is definitely not going to be temporary. Anytime we've had any kind of national action like this, some of that tyranny always stays, depending on what the problem was. But I do think that the Libertarian Party is the only party that would push back on these government regulations. Obviously, the Democrats are pushing for more. The Republicans, there's some crazy QAnon people that are against this stuff, but their politicians continue to push for more. I think that the Libertarian Party needs to have a voice on this and needs to be the loudest voice at the front of this stuff. So if that's a committee to get that done, maybe that's a good idea. We still have the EPCC that can, the approval committee that can stop things from going out or whatever. But the APRC, we do need to craft messaging about this. We do need to be loud about it, and we need to make sure, especially with Biden coming into office, promising lockdowns and mask mandates. We need to be loud about it. And so if that's a committee to get that done, then we should definitely have a committee to get that done. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I have Ms. Adams and then Mr. Phillips. Ms. Adams?
So as someone who's listed in this, to be clear, to my own fault, here I get to throw out some character flaws for you. I have been so focused on budget. I'm sure that Ms. Harlos and I have discussed this at some point. I'm sure I agreed to be on this committee at some point if it were seated. It had completely slipped my mind. Yes, COVID is a huge deal for me. Yes, I think we should be responding. I do work in a healthcare field with a vulnerable population, so I do see both sides of these arguments. I am happy, however, if someone else would like to be seated on this committee instead of me, that's awesome. I do think maybe instead of calling it a COVID response committee, if we're going to seat a committee like this, maybe some type of crisis response committee, because there is always one crisis or another that is seated and called up only in response to things like, I don't know, the earthquake in Mexico in the 80s, Chernobyl incidences, whatever, whose job it is to try and craft messaging in response to a crisis might be a better fit than simply a single issue committee. I agree. I have issues with single issue committees. Typically, they take a whole lot of time to gear up and ramp up, and then the response comes late when it does come. So I agree. And yeah, I think there are a lot of different approaches on this. We should be saying something. We should get in front of the messaging. If this isn't the way to do it, it isn't the way to do it. If someone else would rather have my seat because they want to participate and they're uncomfortable that specific LNC members' names were listed, please know I am happy to do that. I'm happy to duck out in favor of someone else if that's what they would like to do. For me personally, I will continue to make whatever statements I feel as an individual I need to make about government overreach, regardless of what the LNC does. I would like to see us make some statements as a party, but that certainly isn't going to silence me from making this statement as an individual. I don't need permission to speak out against overreach, and it would be incredibly unlike me to ask for it. So, I mean, however we want to handle it, we do need to make a statement. When it was the 55-mile-an-hour speed limits, we were all over that shit, right? When it was Ebola and Zika, we did come out and speak about overreach, but on COVID, we've been silent. Yes, we need to address it, just like we need to address numerous other overreaches of government that we've continued to be silent about. However we decide to handle this, I just want to see us making a statement and handling it.
Mr. Phillips is going to make what I think is the best point made. So I wanted to break off before he spoke. Okay. Mr. Coburn's objectives. There was a lot of whataboutism. You can't concentrate on cancer because you didn't concentrate on, brain-eating bacteria. That's irrelevant. If you think our response for Black Lives Matter was insufficient, propose something to fix it. Don't torpedo something else that's completely unrelated. It's a red herring. But he never said that our response to Black Lives Matter was insufficient. He just said we never created a committee because we didn't have to. This isn't a committee just because there's a thing. It was a committee because there's a thing and we fucked up. He forgot the fucked up part. So, and then to say perhaps these LNC members should go craft a press release, etc. This is not a press release thing. We've already done a press release in March. This is much broader than that because this issue is much broader than that. We're not just talking about a press release. I would have brought a press release if that's what I wanted. This was to develop our messaging strategy. Press releases would have been part of the strategy, perhaps. I don't know what the committee would have come up with. I'm going to get into that more at the end of this broadcast, which is really long, but not sorry. It's a big issue to show you the types of things I have in mind. Because I don't think we've fallen down on responding to other crises, which is why I would disagree with a crisis response committee. I think we have too many committees that stick around too long. I want this to be a do it and go away. Do it, disband. To me, that's really what committees are for. If we start routinely having issues responding to crises, that'd be different, but we haven't. It's just this one. So now let's go to what I think was I didn't mark where this was. I think we were at about 1430, but it's when John Phillips, he says this a lot of times, and he's absolutely right. Let's go back.
Particular to have a
that is seated and called up. We did come out and
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
address it, just like we need to address numerous other overreaches of government that we've continued to be silent about. However we decide to handle this, I just want to see us making a statement and handling it.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I have Mr. Phillips and then Mr. Nana. Mr. Phillips?
Okay, I have my kind of usual thoughts on this, which is that if somebody wants to step up and do it, why are we even discussing stopping them? It makes zero matter to us all they're basically doing is asking for our blessing. It affects not one other thing. Not one. So why would we even discuss stopping them from doing it? That's ridiculous. People want to step up? Let them. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I have Mr. Nana and then some second rounds, which I'll sort out in a moment. Mr. Nana.
I call the question.
I really like to respond.
Mr. Nana has called the question. Is there a second to ending debate and proceeding to a vote?
Second.
Well, actually, I wasn't paying attention at the time. We're 10 minutes over the time, too. So the question actually is called unless there's a motion to extend time.
I move to extend for 5 minutes.
Carlos moves to extend by 5 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Phillips. Is there objection?
Objection.
Yep. There is objection, so we will vote on whether to extend time by 5 minutes. Please use the votes in the participant window, the check yes to extend time by 5 minutes, the red X to not extend time by 5 minutes.
Sorry, I inadvertently voted.
I
David
haven't
has my
counted it
vote,
yet
so-
if you want to.
I did. I took it down.
Okay.
David has my vote.
Okay.
Or vote. Sorry.
By a vote of 7 to 9, time is not extended and the question is automatically called. The secretary will call the roll.
One moment. Ms. Bilyeu,
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Coburn,
No.
Ms. Epke,
No.
Mr. Hagan.
No.
I will vote yes. Mr. Ferreira,
No.
Ms. Hogarth,
David is voting for
Yeah.
reason five.
Mr. Valente,
No.
Mr. Longstrap,
Pass.
Mr. Mullman,
I'll say yes.
Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Nikela,
I vote aye.
Mr. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Ratsep,
No.
Ms. Sarwark,
No.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Went,
No.
Mr. Longstrap,
Yes.
it's 7 yes and 8 no, and 1 express abstention.
I will vote no.
So we have, 7-9-1.
By a vote of 7 to 9 to 1, the motion is not agreed to.
Okay, there is a little bit more. Because there's something, well, we'll get into this in a minute, but let me talk about what happened so far, and there's a tiny bit more. Mr. Phillips is exactly right. Why do you stop people from doing something they want to do? There's absolutely no harm in allowing it to go forward. On the refusing to extend for 5 minutes when you don't even let the maker of the motion respond is fucking rude. I've said that already. I can't believe 9 LNC members. I'd never, ever do that to anybody. Ever. And I never have. I don't think I've ever voted against a time extension. when I knew there were people who wanted to speak. I might have done it when it was only non-board members. I might have, but I've never done it to a fellow board member. Somebody who I already, thought they were solid, I encouraged them to run for the position they have, but someone who just keeps impressing me is Dustin Nana. So I just wanted to bring that up. I encouraged him to run for his region, but I'm glad I did. Now, the last thing is, and I've had a discussion with Chair Bishop Henchman about this. The chair's not supposed to vote, though he does in almost every motion for his own reasons. That's fine. But the chair is not supposed to vote unless it's to cause or break a tie, because it destroys the impression of impartiality. I privately talked to him about this, gave him the Roberts citation, gave him what the priesthood, I'm sorry, you guys don't know my terminology. I call the people over at the Roberts Forum the priesthood. Sorry, inside baseball. So I told them what the priesthood has said on this. They don't have much of an opinion about chairs who vote when it's not to cause or break a tie. I wish he wouldn't. It isn't like it was just this motion. He does it all the time. And it really is not good. So I hope he rethinks that. You may notice I don't call on him, because it also says that in Roberts that the chair, that the secretary, when doing the roll call, does not call on the chair. So when I give him the vote total, it's not soliciting his vote, it's to tell him what it is, because the person who takes, the secretary can't never say something is won or lost. The secretary tells the chair what the vote count is, and then the chair announces the result. I'm not trying to provoke a vote. Yeah, I wish he would stop that practice. And this is really not much to do with this motion, because again, if you watch the meeting, you'll see he votes on every motion. And I don't believe any votes this time were to cause or break a tie. And I did not recall that Mr. Longstreth voted yes. I'm very happy to see that. For some reason, I thought he voted no, and that is my mistake there. Okay, so what's happening now is afterwards the chair asks the indulgence of the body to speak, where he talked about some things he planned on doing. And kind of engages in debate after the fact. That's okay. It happens every once in a while. And when I asked him for a similar indulgence to respond, since I didn't get to respond during debate, it was granted. And then orders of the day were called for, which is fine. So we're going to play this last minute here so you can hear Chair Bishop Henchman speak, and you'll hear my response. If I don't think I had anything to add before I was cut off. And I do see questions. If somebody sees I didn't answer your question, I'll get to them at the end. I just would like to get through this portion here. So, oh shit, I didn't write down where we were at. I'll figure it out. Here we go.
And I'd rather have my seat because they want to participate.
By a vote of 7 to 9, time is not extended and the question is automatically called.
Yes.
It's 7 yes and 8 no, and 1 express abstention.
I will vote no.
So we have, 791.
By a vote of 7 to 9 to 1, the motion is not agreed to. But if the body will indulge me, I just want to say something very briefly on this. Well, as has already been mentioned, our goal is to bring on a communications director soon, which would help with a lot of these tasks of developing messaging. And I think it's good practice for us to be having staff do these things rather than having the board or board members do these things. So, I think we have a lot of opportunity there. Second, I do want to say that I meant what I said. I welcome input and feedback and ideas, particularly if they're concrete and specific about things that we can share. I talk to Mr. Hewitt on about an hour every week. I think he makes the rounds, so maybe a lot of you can relate to that. And he's doing amazing work in California that absolutely needs to be highlighted. And third, it goes to the point of, I view the role of this party is to elect elected officials and for them to advance public policy. And, Mr. Hewitt is doing exactly what we need him to do, what America needs him to do in the office that he's in. And the best way that we can further advance those goals is getting more Jeff Hewitts and more Marshall Burts and more Trisha Butlers and more all of them all over the place. Frankly, if I spent my time, which I don't really have a lot of, on Twitter complaining about whatever, no one cares and no one should care. What people should care about is what our elected officials would do. And, all the examples of the things we've done in the past, those had no effect on the broader public policy because we did not have elected officials at the table. That's how we got to change stuff. And as far as rhetorical stuff to provide ammunition and support for it, there's no shortage of groups out there to do this. And there's certainly no shortage of individuals willing to do that. And, the idea that I tweet something and it makes a difference, well, I think that was the perspective of the last chair, and it's not my perspective. So, just to close on that, if we have great news articles, if we have great op-eds that people are writing, if we have great concrete examples, I would love to share those. And to date, I have received not one. So for all of the complaints and griping and social media animosity about how we're not doing this, that, or the other thing, nobody has yet stepped forward to, message or email or whatever directly. And I'm very easy to get a hold of with, hey, this article was great, share this article. Or, hey, this op-ed is great, share this article. And I welcome that. Please send it. But, LNC resolutions, I don't really know what we're trying to achieve on that because no one's going to read those. But if we can, step up and do a lot of stuff. Now, another thing we can do is be more organized in some of the lobbying and legislative efforts that are related to this. And I'm hoping that the activism coordinator that we're planning on bringing on will help with that as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Madam, Ms. Harloff.
You had asked for a certain indulgence, and I would ask for an indulgence of 1 minute just to respond briefly to some of the items raised.
Certainly, Ms. Harloff.
Okay, I really appreciate it. A lot of people had mentioned, well, we could already be doing this, and we already have a committee, but the fact is we haven't done anything. We've had one statement since March, and that is just absolutely shameful. This hasn't happened. This is exceptional. I agree with Mr. Phillips, no matter what the issue is. When we had Bitcoin, we had somebody step up. What's the worst that happened? They don't do anything? The way everyone's so upset about forming a committee, I just think is honestly irrational. I'm sure there are rational reasons. I just don't understand them. I'm not trying to put anyone down, but we have a fiduciary duty. And I just have to say, I fundamentally disagree with the chair that the only goal, and I would say our bylaws disagree with the chair, that the only goal is electing candidates. We do not get members and activists if they do not see this organization as something that is putting forth a message they can believe in. We have activists getting burned out because they're tired of losing. We lose a lot of races right now. We can win on issues. To me, they are two-pronged. So I just respectfully disagree. I think Mr. Bishop Henchman is doing a tremendous job. This is my only complaint, honestly. I'm thrilled with the job he's doing. But on this issue, and unfortunately, I think it's a fatal issue, we are ashamed to liberty. So I will be doing some things on my own, as people suggested. But Mr. Dosbach called me out and said, well, what motion have you made? Well, I made the motion. I predicted it would fail. I predicted the arguments that would be made, and I was proven right. Unfortunately, I'm thoroughly disappointed in the committee.
Okay. Now let's go back to some things. Mr. Bishop Henchman may have forgotten, but I did bring an article that never got shared by the National Party that had to do with COVID. And it wasn't to him specifically, but he reads the LNC list. It was, I don't believe in bringing things in private to the chair, unless it's like a discipline issue, because I don't believe in the strong chair model, and I don't believe in the sacred chair and the almighty chair model. But I've posted more than one, actually, to the LNC list, but there's one in particular, a great op-ed picked up by the media here in Colorado by someone by the name of John Pickerel. Nothing was done with it. And when you get ignored enough times, you stop bringing stuff. I don't believe he purposely ignored that. I just believe he forgot about it, because there's an awful lot of things that go on. So let's, one thing I didn't get to say, we don't get candidates if the candidates don't think we are a party that holds to their principles. These things are not mutually exclusive. If we want quality, yeah, Jared, I'll send it to you. Pickerel is freaking awesome on this issue. That's the other person I wanted on the committee, Aaron. John Pickerel. Let me continue though. We can't just, we're not just about electing candidates, because there are other ways to win on things, and issues is one of them. In Colorado, the LPCO did an awful lot to get marijuana legalized. Not one candidate was elected, but we changed the lives. We helped change the lives of all of Colorado. I fundamentally disagree with the chair there. And more importantly, the bylaws fundamentally disagree with the chair there. That's all I can say about that. This has been an ongoing debate in the party. But it shouldn't be. And I would encourage everyone to read David Nolan's article, The Case for a Libertarian Political Party. I know people go, we're not tied by the dead hands of the founder, blur, blur. Don't say that. Argue with his points. His argument is solid. And everyone keeps bringing up resolutions that this wasn't about. No, I'm not talking about you guys bringing up a resolution. On the LNC, this isn't about a resolution. This is about a comprehensive messaging plan, which will be the last thing I'm going to talk about in this stream. So, I had some private discussions, and I'm not going to say who they were with, because again, it already pained me to have specific people in this, because I don't want to make this about any person. And let me pull up the notes where basically it was said didn't call me a liar, but somebody who goes around saying false information is a liar. And was said that my assertion that the LNC or the National Party has been largely silent is an absolute falsehood. Really? That's why I said I've been gaslighted, because it's not a falsehood. And I was referred to certain things to look at. Jared, I can get you the article too. But if you search for pickerel, probably you can find it. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so I was directed to some areas, and I went back to the website, and there were a few things that I missed the first time. It doesn't change my opinion, but I was mistaken that there was just one thing. So let me go here and show you things that I found. Okay, I want to cover that. I want to do this systematically. One second here. Okay. I was told to go look at LPTV, and specifically the Libertarians at large. But before that, I found these shows that had to do with COVID. This is all last term. My complaint is about this term. With this issue and in politics, March might as well be a decade ago. And it's funny because I had so many disagreements with Chair Sarwark, but under his time, we responded much better. He was wrong about the convention, in my opinion, but we responded much better. These here, libertarian healthcare and policies in the corona age, libertarian humanitarians of COVID-19, restaurant, bars, and the hospitality. These are all from March. None of them really dealt with mandates as a whole. So let me show you some other things. A libertarian staffer takes a COVID test. Okay, and here are some things I found on the website. Most of them have to do with ballot access, and then there's that press release. We're going to talk about that press release last. So we'll go back to that. And I found this. Again, ballot access. And one thing, talking about sharing something about Alabama's restrictions. That's it. Okay, let's go back to the press release one. Is that okay? That press release is on a resolution that I brought last term, right at the end of last term. And we passed it. Passed it by nearly unanimously, I think. Again, though, that was last term. It went up on the website. I do not believe it was sent to any press outlets. And as new articles come up, it drops off. I'm sorry, that's not a response. And again, it was something I did. Written by David Acklin, a member who worked on it with me. That is not a response. And there was a member in chat at the meeting who said, yeah, we're going to get to that, Aaron, that's because our website isn't a news site. Really? Then why do we have a section on our website entitled News? Sometimes I just want to put my head through the wall. So I was also referred to the Libertarians at Large program. Very good program, by the way. I would encourage everyone to go listen to it because it was said that this was dealt with a little bit. It was never said it was dealt with a lot, but the distinct impression that was given to me was that it was decisively talked about at least once, but I think they said several times. So I took, how many episodes? I think there were 8 episodes. I took 8 hours of my life and listened to them. I should, okay? No, it wasn't mentioned. There were 3 circumstances where you could arguably say it was. 2 of them had to do with price gouging. That isn't my issue. But they did excellent on price gouging, by the way. The last one of the people talking, I don't like naming names, so I'm not going to, had actually invoked the NAP and basically said if our bodies are biological weapons. Didn't use those words, but it was basically you should treat your body as you would a loaded gun. If that is true, and you're like, you won't point a loaded gun anywhere because a bullet can come flying out. Well, if you're a biological weapon, some snot can come flying out, and you're the same as a loaded gun. And we're talking about people not infected, everybody. And said, the non-aggression principle then says you should wear a mask. If that is true, then we should be all for the mandates. That horrified me. That is just absolutely ridiculous. Simply living in a biological body does not make you a biological weapon. If that is true, nobody should ever leave their house. Because the fact is, your body can malfunction at any minute. And you are often in a situation where if you collapse or you die or any number of things that can go wrong with your biological body, you could hurt somebody, you could kill somebody. The founder of our party was driving along merrily, had a heart attack, lost control of his car. He died from the heart attack. Thankfully, he didn't hurt anyone else, but he could have killed somebody. Same thing for the former chair of Montana. I have a friend who was a long-distance truck driver, got diagnosed with epilepsy, then she was no longer allowed to drive. Very understandable. Targeted. We don't say everyone. So she had epilepsy before she knew she had epilepsy. Okay? When she got diagnosed, she was no longer allowed to drive. But any of us could be developing epilepsy. Maybe we should just stop everyone from driving. You know? Prevention. But besides that, if you're an epileptic, there are other ways you could kill people. The example I gave on Facebook was if you're walking up a steep flight of steps, you go into an epileptic seizure and fall backwards, grandma could be walking up the steps behind you and she could fall down. And that could be fatal for an elderly person. Our bodies can go wrong. When you know you have a problem, you have to take steps to mitigate it. But you don't restrict everyone because they could have a problem. That is pre-crime. That is authoritarian fucking bullshit, and that is not the non-aggression principle. I'm horrified at that. And you want a good argument for mandatory vaccines? There you fucking go. So, the only place I didn't get to check a lot of where I was told there were some responses is Twitter. I think that's a joke, to be honest with you. But leading up to the show, while the introduction music was going on, I was able to go back to the beginning of September, and I found 2 tweets. Actually, 1 tweet and 1 retweet. Is that sufficient for September forward? No. Facebook has had some responses. There was one today. Let me tell you a dirty secret of the party. Our social media has very little to do with the national leadership. It's mostly volunteers who are largely unsupervised. So when I say the national party hasn't responded, our national volunteers might have. One of our best volunteers did the one today. It wasn't asked for by the national party. It did get approved. I would hope it would after all my kicking and screaming. But it wasn't asked for by the national party. And in the past, we've had to fight like hell to put things up against mandatory vaccines. You'd think that'd be a given. So, no, Facebook, we just have some volunteers who know how to push the line. And then I've also been told, well, libertarians have different opinions on this. True. We've put out messaging on abortion. Libertarians have differing opinions on that, but our platform says something. And our principles say something. So let me see questions I missed, and then I'll conclude on what some of my ideas are. Okay, I'm going right up to the beginning because I addressed some along the way. Let's see here. What options are there for the free Utahns? Had a lot of questions. What options are there for the LNC to message on this issue rather than establish a committee? I'm sure there are a ton. I just tried to come up with a solution. We need a strategy. This isn't about a single press release. It's not about a tweet. It's not about sharing an article, which everyone kept diverting to. It's not about writing the chair and saying, here's a great article. That's not a strategy. Let's see here. Oh, Keith Komar, I didn't see you here before. I hope you're still here. I have no problem with you watching. I would love to hear how the Ontario Libertarian Party is doing. And, yeah, and what's Tim Moen up to? I freaking adore him. Okay, let's see here. Continuing. Yeah, Emily noted that the mass discussion has to have a context because obviously she said it's a different context if you're on the subway in New York City and on a beach in California or all by yourself in Yellowstone Park. Let's see here. I'm continuing. Yeah, and Aaron pointed out the LNC directs the chair, not the reverse. I think we need to write that on the chalkboard 10,000 times. Let's see here. Ruben asked, do the bylaws say it's not allowed? I don't remember the context of that question. I'm so sorry. But I remember seeing that question and my answer was no. The bylaws do not say that. Okay, let's see here. Yes, for Utahns, this is a bit of a capacity issue. We do not have enough staff. And who was whipping votes during the discussion? There was a lot of texting, typing going on. I don't know. I wasn't doing any whipping of votes. I was interacting, excuse me, with some people who were in YouTube chat during the live stream. And the members in YouTube chat were just extraordinarily frustrated that the LNC didn't pass this. Continuing. Yeah, Lindsay, I do not understand the apathy as well. Oh, free Utahns. What's JBH's stated reason for voting? He's never given me one. After I wrote him those things from Roberts, for like 5 motions, he didn't vote, and then he started voting again. I don't know why. Okay, let's see here. I think that was it for the questions. But I'm making sure. Oh, Jared, I've been very happy with the response from some state affiliates in this year's candidates. Absolutely. But we could amplify. Well, that's going to get into my, what is my ideas. I didn't write them down, so I'm going to go stream of consciousness here. I'll lead off of what Jared had said, that some state affiliates have kicked ass. Sure have. Wouldn't it be great to have a dedicated spot where everyone could see those, and where another state, if they needed to write a response, didn't have to reinvent the wheel? Wouldn't that be great? That's something that's certainly in the National Party's wheelhouse. I thought I said this in debate, but I don't remember hearing it in the playback. But when vaping was on the chopping block. We responded fantastically. A ton of responses. We started a dedicated website about vaping. No one did that of COVID. So I would think that the National Party should do something similar as we did with vaping with COVID. And what should be on that website? Well, the state affiliates' responses, perhaps a database of what elected officials have been the worst offenders so that people would have resources to know who to write and who not to vote for in the future. Yeah, Jared, I thought we did too, but I didn't hear it in the playback. Mandela effect for sure. In addition to perhaps a dedicated website, there should be a banner, at least, on our website. I actually think there should be a splash page that talks about it and directs people to resources when they visit the site. The way there was for during the election, we had a splash page come up for Joe Jorgensen. We should be distributing graphics that people can use with well-crafted talking points. We should have position papers that would be easy to download that our candidates could use. We should have a page that, like we did for Let Her Speak, that said all the locations and dates where things were going on, where people knew where to join the car procession. There are all kinds of protests going around all over the country. National Party's a perfect point person to list those so that people can go to them if they wish to. There are other groups, affinity groups, working on this that we might want to get involved with. We could amplify their voice. I mean, this is me, not written down anything, stream of consciousness. If you sit with me for an hour, I'd have 500 good ideas because that's just what I do. I'm good at that, which is why I wanted to be on the committee. But you get me with another person I can vibe off of, I'll come up with a million different things. I've got already the idea for the title for the website. The group that I am going to be working with, and it's available. If they like the idea, we're going to buy the domain. I mean, there's an awful lot we could do. Does LP Store have any merchandise on being against mandates? That's another thing. I just thought of that right now. I could sit here and shit out 500 ideas. So, yeah, those are some of my ideas. If I kept going another 10 minutes, I'd have 20 more. So, that's why I was a good fit for that committee, by the way, because coming up with strategic things, and then even more on strategy rather than just ideas. The strategy of we do X, Y, and Z when there is more, like another mandate comes out. This is what we do. We do this, this, this. We have this call of action. We do this, we do that. We don't have a strategy. Writing the chair saying this is a great article, why don't you tweet it, is not a strategy for the biggest civil rights violations in the history of this country. It's just not. So I'd like to close with the way I began, because some people won't go back to re-listen to the beginning. This is my only complaint with this LNC. I respect the living hell out of my colleagues. I am not trying to denigrate them. It hurts me to be this critical, actually. It didn't hurt me to be this critical last term because I thought there was actual corruption going on. This isn't corruption. This is just dropping the ball. And what I think is behind some of it is I think we all know we fucked up and we don't want to admit it, and that is so human. But the best thing this party could do, and it won't, but let me tell you what I would do if I were chair right now and realized, oh shit, we fucked up. I would apologize on behalf of the party, on behalf of the National Party, and say from this day forward, we're going to do a fucking, well, I wouldn't use that in a public thing, a lot better, and just do it. People respect when you admit, you know what, you're right. Got distracted. We should have done more. We will do better. That is the party of principle. That is the adults in the room. I have a feeling a lot of these deflections I get, they're just defensive because we know we haven't done enough. And it's perfectly human. But we've got to resist that temptation. And I brought this motion because I realized I hadn't done enough. Steve Dosbach convicted me on that. I hadn't done enough to put a fire under the LNC. I had gotten very discouraged. I knew it would be voted down, but so what? That never stopped me before. I bring a lot of motions that I know are going to get voted down when it's the principle of the thing. So I'm, for Utahns, I'm not insisting upon a mea culpa. I'm just saying, I think if we did that, people would go, holy shit, mad respect, mad respect. I'm not insisting upon that at all for Utahns. I'd be happy with the desired messaging, but I'm saying what I would do if I were chair. That's what I would do. And thank you, Jared. I love you. And all the other LNC members listening, please, please don't, I sincerely love you and respect you. I want us to do better on this. I'm not requiring anything for Utah. I'm saying what I would do. I don't know how I could be clearer on that. I'm saying what I think would be, okay, thank you. Yeah, I never require apologies on anything. You can't force that. It has to be genuine. I was just saying what I would do and what I think would benefit the party and show the world that we are indeed leaders. But that's just my opinion. And I know reasonable people can disagree on that. So yeah, I want to end on the positive note I started on, that I am not calling for people to be voted out of the LNC. I am not calling for anyone to be tarred and feathered. I do think we've earned criticism on this one issue, and that's what I'm hoping to do. I know people think I like being contentious. I don't. As I was planning for this episode, I was supposed to do it a couple days ago, I started getting sick to my stomach. I don't like doing this. And I don't like being the black sheep of the LNC. Everyone wants to be liked. So, yeah, just I want to leave it on the positive note that on everything else, I'm very, very proud of this LNC. So that is it for this episode. I think it would be in very bad taste for me to close with my little patron ad, so I am not going to do that. If you're interested in assisting on this little informal committee, email me at my private email address, KarenAnnHarlos@gmail.com. And you want to know what? Any LNC member could re-bring up this motion if this discussion changed your mind. Mad respect if you did. Okay, everyone, have an awesome night, and another episode on People's Party should probably be out tomorrow, and then we'll be back to history. And I could stop breaking out in hives from having to be confrontational. Yeah, there was a couple points tonight, you probably didn't realize it, but I almost started crying, and I don't want to do that. Have a great night. Love you all.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business.